Well, hello, and welcome everyone to the chat, the space where we have real, authentic conversation and allow you all to partake of these great nuggets. You all know that this month is Mental Health Awareness Month, and how can we actually step into this month without bringing trained, certified professionals in to speak to you? Our job is to enlighten and inspire you, and so we won't settle for anything less. Today we have Miss Phelica Glass here. Let me tell you, she is the grief counselor, not just because it is a name, but because it is the actions and the wording and just the energy that she lives by. This did not just begin once she got the certification, it was always there. So she was a winner, she was a healer from the beginning. And Miss Phelica, my sister from childhood, my sister from when I didn't even know what my name was. I thank you for joining us in this space. And I give space to you because healing will only take place if we give space to those that truly have an authentic understanding of what it is we must do. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. That introduction was amazing. I just want to say that it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you all and to have an opportunity to share with you what really makes my heart jump. So today, I just want to take a few minutes and I'll tell you a little bit about mental health. And, my challenge has been that we move beyond talking about just awareness in terms of how to or what to, but we actually start doing. And so this month, our national mental health theme is back to basics, right? And, how do we get people to talk about the issues, not their issues, the issues. So what's going on? What is it that's weighing on us? How do we get help? What are we looking for when we're seeking help? And so today, I just want to take a few minutes. And what I said to Miss Regina is that I just am going to give a moment of transparency here. And so as I think about mental health and I think about my own journey in life, I can't help but think about my own experiences with depression, my own experiences with grief. That's where I met mental health. And really becoming the grief counselor occurred as I experienced my own loss. So I lost my brother when he was 15 years old. He died in his sleep. Didn't know what to do, what life would look like after that. And my whole world just kind of dissipated. And over the years, I've just kind of been drawn to people who are brokenhearted. And what I realize is that we all have moments in life where we're brokenhearted, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the physical loss of a person, but maybe the physical changes that are happening within our body, the changes that are going on in life. Like right now, I have a daughter, my baby girl is graduating high school. My twins are 20 and they don't really need me. You know how we think, like our work is in everything that we are to everyone else. And so I really struggle some days with, oh my God, my kids are grown. They don't need me now. What? And so I find myself throwing myself into things and being bogged down by all the to-dos. And so when I think about mental health, I want you to think about, where is your peace? Peace. Where is your peace? Where do you find pleasure? Where do you find enjoyment? Where do you find achievement? Where do you share compassion? And what is your environment like? What is it that's bringing you and caring for you and motivating you? Peace, there's so much to it. And so as I think about Mental Health Month, and I encourage people to move beyond just a conversation about, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling depressed, if I'm lacking motivation, I want you to know that you know what you're suffering with. The biggest task now is, now what? What are you going to do with those feelings? What are you going to do with that inaction? What are you going to do with that lack of motivation? What are you going to do about the depression? What are you going to do about the grief? And so this is where I talk to people about leaning in, tap into the people who love you, the people who are going to be honest with you. Now, I know everybody has that friend, right? So you got this one friend that you lean on, that you call, you talk to them about your problems, your issues, and you're like, yeah, and they give you great advice, and sometimes you take it, but most of the time you don't. I want you to move beyond the friend, okay? So I'm not saying get rid of the friend. I want you to acknowledge that at times in our lives, we need support from trained professionals. And needing support from trained professionals does not negate your strength. It doesn't take away your value. It doesn't take away your religious belief and commitment to God or Allah or whomever you may be serving. I want you to know that it is not about taking away from the essence of that. It's about taking advantage of the skilled, qualified individuals in your communities who are trained to help you learn how to cope, how to manage with today's life. Now, let me just be honest. None of us have ever lived through a worldwide pandemic for 2 years straight. None of us have ever lived through a worldwide pandemic, period, right? So it is so unrealistic that we have expectations of ourselves that are pre-pandemic. It is very important that we understand that we all have suffered loss of freedom, loss of individual control, loss of just the ability to move around and do. We have never in our lives been faced with our own mortality in a way that we have been through COVID. And let me just be very honest. I know that we're moving around the world a lot differently right now than we have the previous 4 or 5 months. But let me tell you something. I'm not sure we're done with COVID. And as a result, people are living under some pressures. We have financial stressors. We have employment stressors. We have family stressors. We have lack of support stressors. And I want you to know that all of those are very real. But what happens is we take all of those things and we combine them, right? So we combine them, we compile them, and everything just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden we feel ourselves falling under the weight of the world. So I said I wanted to give you some transparency. The transparency is this. I'm a mom and I have lots of children. I have 3 biological children, and I have some children that I've embraced and some through marriage. But I want you to know that of late, just last week, I was faced with a situation that we aren't really talking about, okay? And I got a message, I got a text message, and the text message said, hey, heads up, someone that your son is friends with died by suicide this morning. You might want to check on him. My heart sank. And my heart sank because this isn't the first time a child in my family has dealt with losing a friend to death by suicide. My youngest daughter lost a friend when they were in middle school, just days before her 12th birthday. My twins are looking at maybe their 3rd or 4th loss to someone dying at the pressures of the pain they are living. And I want you to know that the hardest thing I had to do that day was make the phone call to my son to tell him that someone he danced with, someone he talked to, someone that he had had conversations with had died that day. And the sound of my son's scream through the phone broke my heart. And the sheer pain of his loss brought tears to my heart. Now, you may think, oh, but she's a grief counselor. But I want you to know that in that moment, I was just mom. And all I wanted to do was hold my baby. I want you to know that we often find ourselves not having words about what to say, what to do, or how to do when we find ourselves and our children in chaos or crisis. And what I want you to know is that it is absolutely okay to just be human. In that moment, I was human. I said to my child, baby, who's with you? He was at work, y'all. And my son works in the funeral home business. So he cares for the deceased, making sure that they leave this world with pride and dignity still intact. And my son screamed and he said, all of these suicides are breaking me. And in that moment, he handed the phone over, and I was able to say to his coworker, take care of my baby, get my baby home safe to me so that I could care for him. Now, I don't know about you, but there are definitely times where we are finding ourselves needing to connect and link with other people to create a support system for those that we love while they're in crisis, because in reality, we're standing in the middle of that crisis with them. And I want you to hear me today as the grief counselor say this. There is so much pain and hurt in our world that every single one of us need a couple of other people that we can make a circle with, that will hold our hand, that will talk on the phone, that will text with you, and even go with you to get the help that we need. Now, I'm the grief counselor. Let me be honest. There are times where I have to call on my counselor and I have to go to my doctor and say, I'm not functioning very well right now, or this is a heavy season for me. I think I might need an antidepressant. Not because life is like, oh my gosh, I got this and I got that, but because chemically things are not balancing out in my life that allows me to manage things well. So let me just say to you today, our support system has to be bigger than one person so that it is a system. I want you to know that the lives we are losing are precious, and there's a lot of hurt and pain left behind. And what I want you to do is take care of one another, but not to the degree that caring for others hurts you. So what I want to say is that I have encouraged my child to love on his circle of friends. He's out to dinner right now with some of those friends. And I really cautioned him around caring for, in her last days on this side of the ground, caring for his friend. But he said, Mom, I have to, because I want to make sure it's right. And not only that, but he's also going to work the services of that friend on his 20th birthday. This is going to be a moment that he never forgets. And it'll be a moment that I'll never forget. The same way I'll never forget that moment my daughter called or came home from school screaming and yelling about her friend. I want you to know that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to being transparent about our hurts, being transparent about our pain, recognizing that help doesn't mean weakness, recognizing that prayer and therapy work well together, recognizing that we are stronger together than we are apart. So tonight, the number one message I want you to hear from me is that we are all hurting. We are all broken. And at some point in our life, we all need help. Lean in. Get the help that you need.
You all heard it from the grief counselor. Lean in and get the help that you need. You know, Phelica, the Sunday after we found out that an angel had gained her wings, I was sitting in church with my 1-year-old grandson, and he was drawing in a notebook. And I'll put up a picture on our chat. He was drawing in a notebook, and he kept saying to me, Ma, you see this? Ma, you see this? And he said it over and Ma, you see this? I said, see what, Nebo? See what? Ma, you see this? And it made me sit back as my bishop was preaching. But I was just in that space with him thinking, how many times are things happening right before our faces? But because we're so bound up with just being overly worked, overly busy, overly drained, just overly, that we don't take the moment to see this?
So let me say this, and I know that um, we have these moments where after we lose someone, we always say, "What did I miss?" And let me just be honest and say, there are times where we didn't miss anything. We didn't. There are times where we have worked so hard to wear a mask, and we train our kids to wear masks, and we train our kids to wear masks. So for generations, we have worn mask of warfare. We're good. We got it. It ain't no problem. I'm shaking this off. Like y'all remember, shake that off. Like we've done this thing so much so that we don't know how to be real. So I tell people it's important to me that people understand that it is not about what we missed, because the reality is there's nothing we can go back and change, right? So all of our loved ones, whatever their loss is, whether it's through an exit of a relationship or leaving the earth, there's no going back. And so the thing that we have to do different is we have to model getting help. We have to model being transparent. We have to model talking about those real hurts and those real pains. I don't know how many people actually watch Blackish, the last episode or the second to the last episode, where the guys go out on their man retreat. And in their man retreat, they are talking, the Dre's depressed and his son is sad over a heart loss. And dad is like, hey, we're going on a man trip. We got to man up. We're going to go hunt. We're going to get ourselves back together and be men. And in a moment, Dre's son says, Dad, I've been told that the realest moment you can have with a person is to look them in their eye. And he gets his dad's hands and he looks his dad in the eyes and he says, do you see me? And his Dre's like, yeah, I see you. And he's like, no, do you see me? And Dre embraces his son and he cries and he says, forgive me, son, I'm sorry. Because we're so good at seeing this outer surface stuff that we don't take a moment to dig deep and see where people are really hurting and what people's needs really are. Or when they're talking, we are so distracted by our own hurts and our own pains that we miss connecting. We don't miss things. We miss the opportunity to connect. And so in our connection, it can't happen if we're not willing to be vulnerable and transparent. Well, what did people tell you? Nope, you don't cry. Nope, don't let people see you cry. Because my favorite phrase was, if you see me cry, you should be scared. I'm about to go off, right? I'm about to lose control if I allow other people to see me cry. The reality is, why can't people see us cry? Why can't we be weak in front of our children? Weak, meaning vulnerable and transparent and without the mask.
You're speaking so many truths. And that's been one of my journeys, because childhood, grow up, some of what Regina was. And what I've learned is, like, I had to somehow or another, I became accustomed to wearing a mask. And when you talk about masks, we've all talked about masks, but some of the masks was just to hide the harm that I had, that had occurred, to hide like the emotions of not knowing where I fit. Like, it was so many things to it. And then I remember, like, so much trauma since 2020 has taken place. Not to say trauma hadn't taken place before then, but 2020, it just became like, you're going to feel this. I don't care what you think you want to do in this season, but you're going to feel this. And you're going to feel your way through this. In this season, you're going to get to the point where you identify where you feel it at in your body. I mean, like, my stomach's like, girl, Don't try me. I'm right here. You're gonna identify that it's moving in your body, that no longer like went through one stage where it was the legs. I could feel the trauma that others were experiencing in my legs just because of feeling weighed down, and it would move to the stomach sometimes, and sometimes it would move to the heart. Sometimes it moved to the point where, as a writer, and you can't write because your hands and stuff is feeling so heavy. And I just watched this journey of and some would be like, oh, that's crazy. But I watched a journey of vulnerability that was a beautiful journey, because I remember being in a state where I couldn't feel, where I couldn't identify what I was feeling. And not to say there's nothing perfect about the journey, right? There's nothing perfect at all about it, but it's a journey worth embracing. And so to sit and speak to my therapist, and the therapist is sitting in there like, do you wake up ready to heal people from the time you wake up? Like, are you thinking about helping other people in your sleep? And I'm going, well, well. And she's like, what, the big question is, what are you doing for you? What are you doing for you? So I'll roll to some of these questions that I have for you from some of the hearers, right? One of the things is there a stigma behind how long someone should grieve after death?
I read that question when you sent it to me, and I giggled a little to myself because the answer is yes. We are good at telling people how they should feel and when they should feel it and how they should feel it. By nature, you think about when you lose someone, if God forbid, someone was to lose a immediate family member, most jobs are only going to give them 3 to 5 days to deal with that loss total. 3 to 5 days. In our country, grief is the most uncared for illness that we have. And the stigma is so significant that even though we have been able to get prolonged grief in our new diagnostic book as a diagnosable disease, people who are lay people are throwing a hissy fit saying, you can't quantify my grief. And the reality is we're not trying to quantify grief. We really aren't. But we are trying to identify when grief begins to interfere in your ability to function in life. And so oftentimes I encourage people to, when they endure a loss, endure that loss the way your body naturally endures it. The only expectations I want you to have for yourself are to eat a little something. So graze, because most people don't have an appetite in that initial phase. Graze a little, drink plenty of fluids, and allow your body to do what it naturally does. Do not try and meet the expectations of other people by performing and hosting and opening your home up to others, etc. Allow yourself to go through its natural process for about 30 days. That 30-day window is the ability for the body to rebound, right? It's kind of like that neuroplasticity, our ability to learn, expand, and being able to learn something new, right? So what does my body need? I need to learn. What do I need now? What can I handle? What are my triggers? What kind of things are going to make me cry? And then I tell people, if after that 30-day time period, we're unable to get back to work and regenerate some type of routine and feel some type of comfort, like you still may feel off or feel like you're gray a little or floating through the clouds some. But the reality is after about 30 days, you should start coming out of that and be able to work back into your routine and move forward with life. Now, moving forward with life doesn't mean you're not crying. It doesn't mean you're not talking about your loved one or losses. It doesn't mean that you're, for me, it means being debilitated by it. I can't. I try, but I can't. Or when I do, I break down, right? That's the debilitation part. So yes, there's a huge stigma around when and how long and what it's supposed to look like. And here's my number one statement is my grief doesn't look like your grief, and how you handle it won't look like how I handle it. But the fact is we're all doing it. I just want you to do it without a mask on.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that was something I went through. And I can say when I lost my brother and I lost someone who was very dear to my heart, thought was going to be my husband. You know, within some years, things was going to change. One of the things is I was hearing from people was, you're not grieving right. You need to sit down. You don't need to move. And I kept, trying to figure it out, because I'm like, I've dealt with so much grief in my life. It was just like, I didn't know how to do nothing but move. And I don't know if I wouldn't have been moving around people who were intentional in my life. I don't know if I would have been able to move later on.
Right.
I don't know that. And so I like that you said that your grief is not like my grief, because it's not the fact that I wasn't grieving, because they were showing up in every part of my life, like every part of movement that I was doing, recognizing what was going on with our law process, our systemic institutional set of laws, intentionally mass incarceration, like so many different things were hitting me that were coming up. But then, like in those spaces where I was moving, I could remember things that made me laugh and smile about them as well. And so it was that was my way, and I'm grateful. I don't care about other people. Now I do care about y'all.
You care about them, but your way is your way.
Yeah. And hearing someone validate, because I was trying to figure out whether something was wrong with me. I'm like, well, everybody trying to say slow down, but my body's like, speed up.
Well, and the idea is we all have different needs, and your body knows what it needs, so it's going to do what it needs to do. And there are some people who are like, I just have to lay down, I just have to rest. Well, rest, give your body that. But at some point, I need you to start gradually integrating back into your life, your regular day-to-day life. But I don't mean after a day or two, right? And I'm not asking you to perform, put on a show. Don't do that. That's how we hinder our process, is we put on a show for people. We take care of everyone else, and we're the strong one. And then our grief comes spilling out. And, when my brother died, I felt like I was being the strong one. I wrote a poem for my brother. I delivered that poem at his service. And I'll be honest with you, for years, even to this day, there are things that happen in my brother's service that I don't remember, that people will mention to me. And, I totally know that I was disassociated in that space and in that moment, where it feels like, I'm physically present, but so psychologically, I'm not present there. And I can recall, having these moments shortly after I got back to school. I'm in New Orleans. I really am there alone. I have a friend or two, and I'm there, and I'm literally in my seat in class. I see myself sitting at my desk, but I see myself across the room looking at myself, screaming for help, saying, help me, help me, help me, and ended up in student health and struggling with anxiety and depression following that loss. It's important that people know that there are moments where you need to get help, get the help, ask for help.
And the anxiety was the piece that made me step in and say, I need a therapist, like right now. Like having that feeling in my body where it was, I could feel it in my body, and it was like, I don't know who to talk to about this, and I reached out to some of my great people that I know, like, hey, I'm gonna need y'all to say, I'm gonna need something. But it got to the point where it was like, I don't know. Like my body was like, I don't know. And I found myself deep breathing and doing everything that I've done over the years. And I was box breathing, I was trying to do some extra stretches with it and going to a whole vegan diet. I was switching up things. I'm like, nah, this right here, whatever this is different. And, and I was saying it, this is different. And it got to the point where I said, I need help. I need help. And I don't need help later. I need help right now. I need someone. I need a Black body, and that was my choice I made. I need a Black body individual that I could sit with and go through these steps, because it's not just that I'm dealing with grieving, but I'm dealing with the trauma that ties into the movement. And I need somebody that can tap into that. So you actually answered a couple of those questions interchangeably. And so listeners, please understand, I did not jump over your question, and it's not that she answered it interchangeably. Right now together, I'm looking at questions 1 and questions 3, and she downloaded those to us. So please don't get mad at me. I just want to say that. She answered that. I can't give her too many questions. And we're already at 30 minutes now. The next question, she even gave us pieces of how she has dealt with grieving. And that's another thing. So for me right now, I think, I want to move on, but when we look at right now of how to support our young people, I know here in the state of Kansas, I was looking at some of the numbers, not only the numbers that when it came to suicide deaths, but I was looking at numbers of depression, how high our rate of depression is between our young people, and just depression as a whole. It was several health disparities. It was several things that I was going at through and I was looking at. And it's like, and I don't want to ask you everything about all of those things, but when it comes to the grieving process, how can we support our young people? Because the young people are my heart, right? And elders are my heart, and I can go to so many people and jumping around, but young people
are your heart,
because they're going to carry our legacy, right? They carrying everything. Like you said, take the mask off. Not only take the mask off, understand the tools that you've learned and you've achieved and you've acquired so that you can help them, and understand that they're not going to be able to use the tools in the way that you used them, but be able to offer them something that you went through. But I asked you the question, right? Because you got the credentials. I'm restorative practice, restorative justice, ministry, but
you answered it. So I wholeheartedly believe, in order to help anyone and especially our youth, we have to give people a space where their words are honored and their words have meaning. I think oftentimes our youth are seen physically, but they're not seen, they're not heard. And so we have to provide safe spaces. And I know that the word safe space can be triggering for some, but I want you to know that we have to give young people a space where their words move into action or create adults to take action. And that we provide them support that goes beyond self, meaning we might have to at times look beyond our own personal values or morals in order to get them what they need. And so lean in on your community mental health systems in terms of know what the practices are, know who the people are in your community who can help. So I can honestly say recently I really was struggling, and I'm trying to find a way to resolve or help contribute to solving one of the issues that I find, which is that this week I had several people reach out to me for suicide bereavement care. And in that, I found, as I messaged people and said, who do you refer to? People said, you mean other than you? No one. And it's not because I'm that great, I'm dope, but listen, it's because there's no one else that's identified publicly that this is their thing and this is what they're good at. And honestly, when I went to the website for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, I found that I'm the only clinician in Topeka, and there's 2 in Lawrence that are certified, clinically trained for suicide bereavement. And there are a few others in Kansas City and Overland Park and Olathe. But total, I think there's about 15 of us in the state of Kansas, and that's not near enough. And so what I want you to do is I need you all to know that if your child has a need, as you're seeking out providers, I want you to go beyond finding a general practitioner. I want you to look for and ask your insurance company. So there's a consumer client line that you can call. That consumer helpline you can say to them, I'm looking for a therapist who specializes in anxiety with teenagers or with transgendered youth or with Black youth, or be specific about what you need. I'm looking for a therapist who specializes in suicide bereavement. Most people don't even know that it's a thing. It's a thing. I'm looking for someone who can help us with end of life care, meaning someone who knows that they're passing away and they're transitioning and they need some closure. I want you to find exactly what you need. So in your request, in your search for clinicians, be specific. Ask for the free consultation. Most of us will offer a 10 to 15 minute free consultation so that you can kind of get an idea if that person offers what you need. Do you like their voice? Is their voice annoying? Do they, are they catering? Are they compassionate? Do they sound like they care? I want you to get what you need. So the biggest thing for me with providing help for youth is that adults know the resources and adults hear and see their youth, meaning we see more than just their physical self, but we are able to help them identify the physiological things that are going on within their body and get help. Don't be ashamed of the mental health issue. Get help.
Thank you so much. I am so honored that you joined this space with me on today. I hope that you all that have tapped in on today, and if you don't tap in on today, right, and you catch the video, I need you to not only watch the video, but I need you to share the video, right? And you can catch this video will not only be on Facebook, but it will be on Twitter and it will be on the YouTube. I need you to understand that in this season, we are here for you. And there are people who are capable of assisting you through this process. It is your difference that makes the difference. But you need somebody that can tap in and assist you on a journey. This is healing is a journey. It is not done overnight. It is a journey. And it's okay to be on a journey because in every part of your life, every stage of your life, you've either stepped through something or you've crawled through something, a journey again. Yeah. So I thank you again for joining me in this space. Please make sure you give some love to Miss Phelica. I need you to tap in and catch on to her. She will be back up and shooting videos so you all can be informed by her. And she is an awesome speaker, as you could tell, as you listen to her voice. Very awesome, very strategic about every word she drops out. It's not just about the career path. Her life is a movement which is tied into the mission she is called into. We thank you, Phelica. We honor you. And sister, I love me some you, so you ain't even got to worry about that.
Well, I thank you and I appreciate you. And just out of respect, I also want to say that I give honor to those of you who are living without your loved ones. And I honor the life that they have lived. And I want you to remember pain will cause us to do things we would never expect. Love on yourself and love on others.
Yes. Bye, everyone.